Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where daily thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, Angel Ribo, CEO, consultant, TV host, international public speaker, and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation, is going to be co-hosting with Dan Blanchard. Dan is a best selling and award winning author, speaker, and educator. They are going to be bringing a very special guest today, Chris Salem. Chris is an accomplished life and business strategist, CEO, world class speaker, and award winning author. Before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment down this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that is going to benefit of the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, while we are live streaming, like right now, we have the active chat, the screen that you're going to be seeing here on my side or under the screen if you're seeing us from a smartphone. And through there, you can interact with us. You can ask your questions. We just please ask you to follow the format, word question in caps, and the actual question in relation with the conversation that we're going to be having today. We also want you to collaborate with Mindalia with your own valuable content. And for that, you can go to our website. On the top, you're going to find a link that says Collaborate with Mindalia. That link is going to take you to a form that you can fill out for our technical team to be getting in contact with you. Remember that you can collaborate with Mindalia in English through Mindalia TV, as you already know, and in Portuguese through Mindalia Televisao, and Spanish through Mindalia Televisión. We want to invite you to visit our different platforms, our channels, our Facebook accounts, Instagram, follow us. So in that way, you're going to be always updated about the information that is being shared. I'm not going to delay this any further, and I am going to leave you with Angel, Dan, and Chris. Guys, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Mirna, for the introduction, and welcome back, Dan. How are you today? Hold on a second. Now, okay. Now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm wonderful, Angel. How have you been doing?
Very well, thank you. We are very happy here in Texas today. It's such a sunny weather. It's great to have a winter like that.
It's a little cold in Connecticut.
Awesome. So today I think you are bringing us another amazing guest to our show. Is that correct?
Yes, we have Chris Salem today, which is a great guy. I met Chris back a while ago. We spoke at an event, I think a couple of years ago. It feels like now. And we've done some podcast show together. And me and Chris have a lot of things in common. You know, we're doing a lot of things to help fathers raise, bring up and raise better boys and turn their boys into men and, just overall do a better job at what they're doing. Unfortunately, too many fathers are kind of falling down on the job. And we want to help fathers do a better job. And we want to help the next generation, have a good chance of succeeding and doing good things, in the next era. So I'm pumped to have Chris Salem here. And, between me, you, Angel, and Chris, we should have a great show and be able to share some awesome information with people.
Absolutely. I'm sure we will. So welcome, Chris. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Angel, Dan, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So let's start. I mean, actually, it's great. It's a great time to start a conversation. I don't know about the rest of the states in Texas, at least in North Texas. The kids are going back to school tomorrow. I think the college starts in Texas, I think next week. But obviously, that means that for the last few days, parents and kids have been able to bond, or at least try to bond, right? If that's okay with you, then I would like to start asking or sending Chris a curved ball today. So
I'm ready. I played baseball.
Curveballs are good, right? Let's go for it.
Awesome.
My arm paid the price though for throwing curveballs, so I don't have my arm doesn't work anymore like it used to.
No problem. So okay, so it's been many days together. Okay, so let's picture this. Let's picture this scenario. It's been many days together. Probably those days have been days in which both of them have been like catching up if they don't live together. And if they live together, they have had much more time to be not only exchanging gifts, but also, talking about life and talking about the future and talking about the family, what the family is, and what the family represents. What would you think, Chris, is that one of the most important blind spots that families have today?
I think the problems that most families have today is the ability to really relate and understand each other. And this is especially important for parents when we are communicating with our children. You know, a lot of times we talk to them rather. I mean, we talk. You know, we're not talking directly to them. We're talking to respond versus to truly relate and understand. So it's learning that if we have the ability to relate to them, even if it's something we don't agree with them, right? But we have the ability to kind of relate to them first, they're more likely to then to want to communicate more to us rather than the opposite, to open up. So it's not telling kids how, when, or why to do things, but it's learning how to relate to them, but yet do it in a way that's fostering an interdependent relationship that allows the family together to really communicate at a higher level. So I would say that you're not seeing a lot of that, and this is why a lot of families unfortunately fall victim to codependency.
Yeah, and I would say, if I could jump in there, Chris, and add to that, you were saying that unfortunately too many parents or too many adults are speaking to kids, and I feel that they're also too many are speaking at kids.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, instead of with kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to speak with kids, not at them. And I don't know if that, that means getting down on their knees so that you're at their eye level, you know what I'm saying? Or talking their language if they're just as tall as you. You know, we got to speak with them instead of at them. I remember back several years ago, I had this student teacher, and he was really smart. And he was sitting there, talking in front of the class, pretty much speaking at the kids, kind of showing them how smart he was. And I pulled him aside after, and I said, "Hey, John," I said, "you're a very smart guy. You're going to be a great history teacher someday. But none of these kids care how much you know until they know how much you care. So they got to find out how much you care. And how do you do that? You speak with them instead of at them or even to them. You speak with them." So I'm right on the same wavelength as you, Chris.
And that's what makes you such a great educator and a teacher, because they look at you, Dan, not as somebody who's just a teacher, but you're a role model. You're a father-like figure that perhaps, even if they have a father present, that father is not serving that role to them. That they look at you for those values. Or if it's a boy that doesn't have a father, lives with a single parent, a mom. And that, why this is so important that we talk to them rather than at them. So important.
Go ahead, Angel.
No. I was going to ask, why is that happening? Do you guys think that parents today are more afraid of talking or interacting with their kids than before, than our fathers with us?
I would say that, I think this has been an ongoing issue. I think it's a little harder now because a lot of times parents feel like they're overworked. They have too many responsibilities. And the last thing they want to do is get engaged in an in-depth conversation. It's not that they don't want to. It's just that they don't understand the child, right? Like they think they do. So it's easier to speak at them than to them. And because of their own upbringing, where maybe perhaps they had the same issues from their father, they unconsciously repeat these again with their children. It's unconscious. They just end up doing the same things. So if there was dysfunction with themselves growing up, they end up indirectly doing the same thing with their kids, not even realizing it.
Oh, absolutely. We definitely do the same things that our fathers did without even knowing it, Chris. Fully agree with you. And Angel, just to piggyback on that, I mean, when you're in a rush, when you're trying to get somewhere quick, you don't have a prolonged conversation about, why the kid needs to put on their shoes. You know what I'm saying? You're like, "Put on your shoes right now. Let's go. We got to go. We're going to be late." And you might start screaming at them, barking orders at them because you're trying to get out the door to get to whatever it is so that you're not late to work again. We're facing, the adults of this era, we're facing these stresses of being overwhelmed and overworked and trying to get somewhere and not be late again. So, it's much quicker and much easier to bark orders to kids than it is, as Chris was just saying, to have like a prolonged conversation and make them understand. And, one of the things that I've talked to Chris about, and Angel, you as well, was that, one of my mottos that I do is I love the whole extended family, the whole Granddaddy's Secrets, the whole mentoring thing, is that hopefully like the grandparents can somehow be involved in this, who have a little bit more time and don't have to bark orders because they're going to be late for work. So hopefully they can get in there and they have the time to say, listen, here's the deal. Your father can't be late to work again. Or maybe they could tell the father, go, get to work. I'll bring the kid to school. You know what I'm saying? And while they're bringing the kid to school, they're explaining to the kid, listen, your father can't be late to work again because his boss is going to like fire him or dock his pay or whatever. And just kind of explain it. Saying your dad didn't mean anything about it when he maybe barked at you a little bit. You know, your dad loves you. He's not mad at you or angry at you. He's just stressed. So if the grandparents can maybe explain that to the kid, and then maybe later on, if the extended family, the grandparents, can maybe have a talk with dad and say, hey, dad, every once in a while, you got to slow it down a little bit, right? You got to slow it down. You can't always be barking orders at your kid, right? Because your kid's starting to think that maybe you don't like them. And that's a road we don't want to go down.
Absolutely. Because not only, like you said, Dan, that's, you know, because the kids will pick up on that. And then eventually this is where self-confidence issues happen, self-image, certain behaviors and habits that don't serve them, but that could form. And then they end up repeating these patterns again when they have children, or they just sometimes can't seem to maybe, you know, form the life that they thought they would because of a lot of these things. So it's so important. And you made an interesting point about the granddad. I know of a gentleman who's 60, in his early 60s, that actually is right now currently raising his grandson like he was the father, because his daughter had some issues, right? She's in recovery right now, and right now would not be a good role model for her son as she goes through this process. So he's filling that role to establish these values, because he recognized that the things that he did as a father were not serving to his daughter, but he was able to recognize that and make these changes. So it's like he's getting a second chance to do it right with his grandson. And this is a way that he can instill like these values. He relates to his grandson. He's active in his grandson's sporting programs. And when his mom does come back when she's healthy and kind of gets through her stuff, you know, she's going to be able to make that transition in a way that's going to be beneficial to her son, and knowing that her father was able to fill that gap while she's going through this process.
I couldn't agree more with you, Chris. I mean, I see that frequently being an inner city school teacher for the last 20 plus years. And thank God, you know, adults get second chances as grandparents to do this. But I would caution the struggling parent to say, listen, this is not a, I know I get out of this free sort of thing.
Oh,
you
yeah.
got to do your job to put yourself back in a position where you can be a parent to that kid, and you can't be dragging your feet because your father or your mother, you know, the kid's grandparent, is burdening the weight and carrying the weight right now. You know, you got to do your thing, and you got to get back up on your feet, because think about it. Two's better than one, right? I mean, if the kid's got a parent and a grandparent helping them out, you know, then we've got a better chance of raising this generation to become those fine young men or those fine young ladies that we want them to become, so they can become responsible citizens, you know, that we pass the torch to, and they raise the next generation the way they're supposed to raise it. So, because I see it all the time, and sometimes, sadly, I see parents kind of like thinking that they've got no more responsibility in this. I see that's not true. Parents, you need to get back in there as fast as you can.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is like this has been on like a thing for 6 months, so it's not a permanent thing. Obviously, it's a temporary. But she was just in a very bad place, and I think would have been a bad influence during that time on her son. So I think that they're making that transition as we speak.
Yes, absolutely. So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little teeny bit about your Empowering Fathers?
Yeah, so the way Empowered Fathers in Action came about was, it's kind of funny that, you know, I, as a life and business strategist, I help people to overcome limited beliefs that were, you know, where these limited beliefs were established at childhood. So as adults, I'm helping them to get to the root cause of these limited beliefs, which are usually tied to a parent, whether if it's father, son, or some type of an authoritative figure in their life during that time. And when I met a gentleman that was on my radio show last year, Joe Cohen, he wrote a book called Right Father, Right Son. Right meaning that WRITE. It was kind of like these journals that they were writing to one another, kind of like notes, you know, kind of documenting their father-son bonding process. And it really, really touched me. And I saw that, was everything perfect? No. You know, they talk about there were certain times they disagreed, there were struggles. There were some issues in the marriage in terms of Joe's marriage at the time. But it was just very transparent, and it talked about how communication is so important with, in this case, with father and son, that it got me thinking along with them that this is an issue, with all the issues with bullying, with school shootings, prisons that are packed with these inmates that either come from fatherless homes or where there's dysfunction at the fatherly level, that we have to do something rather than manage the problem. Let's get to the root cause of these issues, which tie back to limited beliefs. So we're a movement. Empowered Fathers in Action is a movement that helps to strengthen the father-son bonding process, but we don't limit ourselves to just fathers and sons. We address parents and children, that we want to build these children into more self-confident adults, but it starts with the parents recognizing that in themselves so they can be the example for their kids to follow. So we can improve the communication process, and then allow these kids to then grow into adults so they don't repeat those patterns again with their future families.
And I love, Chris, how you say about them improving themselves. It's sort of like up on the airplane, how you put on your own oxygen mask first.
There
so
you go.
Help your kids. You know what I'm saying? So you improve yourself first so that you can, be that empowered father, be that good man that can help your kids, next. But I would also say, Chris, it's not easy. It's hard to be a good man. It's very hard to be a good man. And I would say that part of that equation is you also have to be a good husband so that you have that family dynamic and that role model and that atmosphere within your family that facilitates the raising of another good young man. Because if you're not being a good husband and your boy is seeing that, your daughter's seeing that, you're kind of shortchanging yourself when you're trying to do, what you may think is your best to raise a good man and to raise, a good daughter. So it's hard.
No, you're exactly right. Because the daughter could grow up to end up finding a man that either yells and screams, and maybe this is how men are, and that's all she knows. And the same thing with the boy, that it's okay to mistreat women or not to show affection to women and not to spend quality time with them. Yeah. So these are all examples of being that example. And is it easy? No. It's like working out at the gym. You want to be in shape and be physically fit. You can't go once in a while. These are things that take practice. That it requires certain habits and disciplines that are consistent over time. And we have to be consciously aware of this. Are we going to make mistakes? Sure, we're human. But knowing that we can be transparent and do the best we can, knowing that, so that we could be better examples for our kids to model. Kids grow into what they observe and what they see in their parents, not what's told to them.
No doubt. And I would say, to add to that equation again, Chris, is that there's got to be some kind of quantity of time. You can't have these fathers just zipping in and out of the life and buying the kid something nice and saying, I took the kid to, a very expensive dinner or New York Yankees baseball game, and I spent a lot of money on the kid, and that's good enough because we had a real high quality, time. And it's like, dude, you do that like twice a year, 3 times a year, and then you're absent or you're like not there. And when you are there, you're not there. You're not presently there. So, like I said, it's hard to be a good man and a good empowered father. So you got to do these sort of things. And you see this many times with the upper socioeconomic status and the socioeconomic class, where you get these high-powered jobs and you get these men that are flying in and out of their children's life, and they're just not there. No. So, in a way, they're dropping the ball too. And I'm sure you see that a lot, Chris. Angel, I'm sure you see that from time to time as well.
Yeah, no one's immune to this. This is not like a certain happens in impoverished communities. No, this happens across the board. No one's immune to this. This is something that we all have to be conscious. This is why we call Empowered Fathers a movement, because it's not certain people that are going to be responsible for helping to make this change. It's everybody. It's communities. It's businesses. It's everybody getting involved to recognize, like what you talked about on my show, it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same thing here. It's not that we're putting all the responsibility on somebody else, but that we all play a part to be the example for these children to model themselves so they can create who they are in a way that utilizes the right habits and disciplines to be better husbands, to be better wives, to be better parents, and to be better leaders in their communities and businesses.
Chris, would you say, is there something in the masculinity of fathers today that might have affected the fatherhood?
There's absolutely, I mean, there could be cultural things like, you know, for instance, I'm part Lebanese and part Greek, right? And obviously, you know, it's very male dominated. You know, the man is always right. And, you know, my grandfather was like that. And my father was somewhat like that in a way, where, you know, my father was always right and he could do no wrong. And my mother had to listen. And yes, so some of those things play a role. But we have to recognize while these things can, you know, be cultural, that they don't work. And we can't just become, you know, we have to understand that we could be our own person. We don't have to be a product of how we were raised. That if we know that it's not the right thing or serving the family and serving our children, that we have to be the change first. We have to recognize what we're doing. We can't be responsible for somebody else. That's up to them to make those changes. Even our children, right? The best thing we can do for our children is to be that change, be the example for them. We can't force them to change. We can't force them by saying they have to do a certain thing, because that just does not work. What Dan brought up earlier, we have to become that change. So we have to recognize that certain cultural things, that how we've been raised, that they don't always work, and in many cases they don't, and we have to break those patterns, and that we don't have to be a product of that. We can be who we are and be a better role model for our kids.
So I would say, Chris, I don't know if you have any advice for people out there. If you've been raised in one of those families where you did not have that real empowered, positive male role model father, and maybe, you know, or if you did, maybe, but maybe it was a bad example, right? So now maybe you're making the same mistakes that your father made, or maybe you're just outright rebelling and making a whole new set of mistakes. You know, I know that the answer's got to be somewhere around self-improvement, but do you have any suggestions for like the young boys that are trying to grow into old, you know, young good men that have finding themselves stuck in the middle somewhere between making the mistakes their father made and then trying to do the opposite of father, but also making mistakes, a whole new set of mistakes?
Yeah, I would say that again. You know, it always starts with the parent. You know, it's recognizing that if your child is not behaving a certain way or doing certain things, to recognize what could we be doing that could maybe we didn't. It's not like it's our fault that our child became some way. That's their responsibility, no matter what has happened to them. But what can we do differently? And I always say that we always have to, you know, instead of managing the problem of putting a Band-Aid on things, or let's just, you know, change our habits or change this, that doesn't work. We need to get to the root cause of what makes us do what we do that's not serving not only us, but our children. And for me, the root cause was my father. My father, I had anger growing up, and this anger interfered in everything I did. It interfered in work relationships, personal relationships, and it got me into a lot of trouble. And it was because it was my father that I had this anger toward. I didn't realize it because my father was not emotionally available. He could be very verbally abusive. And he was one of those guys that you talked about, Dan, that he was not there. He would show up once or twice, you know, take me, you know, to an expensive trip. And that was the extent of it. It was really, there was no communication. There was no bond there. And I was a lost young man with no direction, angry, and always needed to be validated by an older male figure. And I sought out this validation in coaches, in sports teams I played for. I sought it out in work relationships, only to be disappointed over and over and over again. So if I didn't address it at the root cause of it, I would have repeated the same patterns with my child today, not even realizing what I'm doing. So I had to get to the root cause to forgive the source, which was my father, and to allow that anger that was associated with it to go out the door along with it. So anything that would trigger anger in me now won't linger in me. It will come and pass because I'm in a place now that I'm present and grounded, incorporating the right types of habits and disciplines now that I can be a better example for my child and communicate in a more effective way interdependently so he grows into a better young man to do the same with his family.
No doubt. Great advice, Chris. And unfortunately, I see too many angry males out there, especially being an inner city school teacher over the last 20 years. You know, there could be angry fathers, could be angry sons. I've seen way, way, way too many of that. It's kind of scaring me a little bit. So, I mean, if I was to give some advice to parents out there, fathers, mothers, I would say, listen, if you want to give your kid a great chance at doing a lot of good, get them in some extracurricular activities where they can meet some special, men, some great role models, some great positive influences, so they can meet guys like you, Chris, guys like you, Angel. You know what I'm saying? So they can be in a place where they can do something hard, where they're doing something that they like, and where they're surrounded by great men like the three of us and the thousands and thousands of others that are out there. Parents, get your kids in extracurricular activities. Trust me, you won't regret it. It's something you need to do.
I totally agree, 100%.
And let's step back a little bit and let's go back to this, two role, let's say to the father and son or daughter model. The other day, I think just like this last weekend, I saw it was really, I mean, I never saw that before. It was a stroller, right? And it was the father, carrying the front wheels, the mother carrying the back wheels, and the stroller was at the top. And it was, and the caption was like the tyranny of today's, kids. And I was reflecting, and I was thinking, obviously, the first thing I thought, okay, so what does that mean to me?
Yeah.
And then have I ever seen someone that has been publicly, let's say, doing things to their parents that shouldn't be doing, or that I would never do to my parents? But don't you think that somehow maybe kids today don't have the same kind of maybe role models or the same kind of people or even friends into the parents, the very small amount of time that they spend with them, they really do anything for their kids?
Yeah, I mean, if I could jump on that, Angel.
Yeah.
What I'm seeing today is I'm seeing so many kids are being elevated above the adults. Sort of like that stroller that's being picked up over their heads. I mean, so many kids are being elevated above their parents. It's like, in the old days when we grew up, Chris and Angel, like it was mom and dad was first, the kids was second. Mom and dad's marriage was first, the kids were second. Today, it's like the kids have been elevated over the adults. And then who are the kids looking up to? How do they have a role model when they have to look down at their parents, at least in their own heads? They think that they've been elevated so much that they look down at their parents. Who are they looking up to? They're supposed to be looking up to us. But this generation has made the huge mistake of elevating kids above the adults, whether it's the parents, whether it's the teachers, whether it's the police officers, the coaches, whatever it is, the cafeteria workers. And that should have never happened. And they become very, very entitled and very, very lost, because who do they look to for guidance and leadership when they already think that they're head honcho and there's nobody above them? What do you do?
It's so right, because, again, it goes back to the dynamic that, two parents are working, or even if it's a single parent, that parent is working to make ends meet. That's just the way our economy is. And it's easier to please the child, and which leads to enablement and being entitled. And then that obviously forges a codependency relationship, not only during that time, but that's what the child will learn to bring into their adult lives, that they'll seek out codependent relationships, which in the long run don't serve anyone. So I agree, this is an epidemic that is gotten way out of line in terms of causing dysfunction, not only in the homes, but also in in the workplaces. You see people jumping around, they're not committed to what they do, they can't focus, and it's just people going through the motions. This is a problem that goes beyond the family dynamic, from going from pleasing to enabling, versus from being teaching kids how to be responsible and to look up to us as role models, and to teach them that, to empower them to do things that can lead to more interdependent relationships as they become adults. So I agree, it's a major issue.
So as I said earlier, like we grew up in a generation where our parents made us do hard things. Our parents were always tough on us. And now we're the ones in charge. We're the adults, and we're making the opposite mistakes. We're trying to make sure our kids' lives aren't as hard as our lives were. And we're making a whole new set of mistakes by making our kids' lives too easy. So parents, adults, we've got to do something to swing the pendulum back in the other direction. And let's get our kids a feeling, a taste for doing some difficult things. And then when they succeed, they're going to have like a feeling of self-esteem for real, maybe a feeling of respect and a feeling of appreciation for hard work and accomplishment. They don't really have that today. So like I said earlier, maybe we need to get them into extracurricular activities that are difficult, that are challenging, so that we can at least get them, started down that path of maybe doing something difficult and gaining some of these skills and experiences that they just don't seem to be they don't have right now. It's crazy.
I agree. I mean, it's if you're learning to take responsibility and problem solving, even at a young age, is such important in the development. It's good. It's what's going to allow men, these young boys, to become men, to form interdependent relationships with their future wives, with their children, and also in their businesses. This is also going to be, make communities far more stronger as a unit working together to help solve problems collectively in their communities. So this is something that just magnifies itself outward in so many great ways.
Chris, what would you say was like that defining moment in your own life that made you do what you do today?
Well, at the time, Angel, when I was going through this process back in my late 20s, I was directionless. I almost had 2 near-death experiences as a result of alcohol abuse, drug abuse, because of suffering from the root cause, which I didn't even know what was at the time. And while I had those 2 near-death experiences, that was not the wake-up call for me. The wake-up call was the year that my father decided to kind of try to make a way to come into my life, and it's something that he wasn't able to do all that time growing up. And that was basically the last year of his life, because he developed cancer. And I know my dad at that point had resented how things had played out, because he had chased the almighty dollar. He sacrificed his family for success because he grew up from nothing. That's all he knew, and he wanted to do it different. But unfortunately, there was no balance. So he had his emotional demons, and obviously that took his life. That formed cancer, and his limited beliefs basically, is what ended his life. That was the wake-up call for me. And knowing that I had that I can't blame the world. I can't even blame my father. My father could only be the father that he was, because that's all he knew, because he experienced the same thing from his father. That I had to take responsibility to not only reclaim my life back and to recreate it, but also to build a foundation that I could do things differently, so that my future son or kids would not repeat these same mistakes that I did, and so on and so on. I had to break that chain, so to speak. So that was the wake-up call for me, which got me into this process that allowed me to do that, which is what I teach today with my coaching clients. And what we're doing now is taking that same concept and applying it through the nonprofit, through Empowered Fathers in Action, that also help parents directly, help community leaders to teach this in their communities, bringing it into schools through social emotional learning programs, and also getting corporations and businesses to embrace it, so they can really offer programs for their employees. That work-life balance and family time is so important, not only for them, but also for their businesses long term.
For the fathers that come to your program, that you help with their lives and their families, what would you say is the number one aha moment that you tend to see more often?
I think what the aha moment is that when they recognize that who they are, what they thought they were, is not really who they are. They recognize for the first time all these things that happened to them were not necessarily intentional, even though it might have appeared so. It's because they always felt that they had something to do with it. Whether it was any type of abuse or neglect, abandonment, that they had something to do with it, and they realized that it was not them. That everyone has their own limited beliefs. They have their own journeys. That sometimes people can only be what they are at that time. They can't always be the best parent. But if we're all to be able to recognize this and take responsibility to get out of the problem into the solution, to recognize that and do it, we can make these changes gradually over time to make these shifts in mindset. And this is really where it's so important for the parents to recognize this, so that they can be the example for their children. It can't be the other way around, because we don't want the children to grow up into adults and then we have to break those patterns later. Let's do it now when they're young, when they can make those changes rather quickly.
And what's the number one obstacle that you find?
I would say the number one obstacle is patience. This is a process. This doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over a week or maybe perhaps months. This could take a while. And everyone's different. So when people come to me, how long is this going to take? Well, it depends on you. And so these things, there is no set period of time. I'm a firm believer that any success in life, whatever success means to you, is a byproduct of the process. Your commitment to certain goals, habits, disciplines, and goals that you have in the process, being in the moment as they accumulate day, week, month, quarter, year, will eventually yield the outcomes that you desire. So the key is learning to be present and focused and committed to the habits, disciplines, and goals that are going to serve you in a way that help everyone around you, and not allowing those people to make those changes on their own, empowering them rather than telling them how, why, and when to do it.
Dan, anything you would like to add?
I would just like to say that Chris has had some great answers there. It's patience. There's no doubt about it. You got to get them while they're young. You got to work on changing kids and raising them the correct way. And then we got to have patience with the kids, and we got to have patience with the adults. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the mistakes that adults are making, just like kids. I mean, if you think about it, in a way, sometimes adults are like grown kids, but a lot of the mistakes that they're making are just kind of like subconscious. It's just the natural behavior, the natural reflex of what they do, how they were raised. So we need to have patience with the adults, and we need to have patience with the kids. And as long as we keep setting up, the right role models, the right information, and lots of patience, then we can help the adults to be more empowered, to learn, improve, and we can help the kids become better and become fine young men that will someday pick up the torch and lead us into the future. No doubt.
Chris, have you found any difference between more over 50s or even 60s year old parents and younger parents?
I would say that ages. I mean, it doesn't matter what the age. I've worked with individuals that are grandfathers and still are in the grips of the root cause to their limited beliefs. Being in this case, it could have been their mothers or even fathers. I've worked with men that are in their late 60s where they were crying like babies, with carrying around this anger and this resentment about their dads who have been long gone, even for 20-something years, but yet we're still like that little boy inside that couldn't be the man they wanted them to be, and it led to a lot of dysfunction, either in relationships that went sour, divorces, alcohol abuse, issues with being truthful or honest and having integrity in their businesses, because they were constantly looking ways to escape. They were just surviving. And so these are things, it doesn't matter what age it is. And you can make these changes at any age. It's just that, as Dan said before, if we're able to get to people sooner than later, it just allows them to have the whole rest of their life ahead of them. But in this case, even if it's somebody who's in their 60s or 70s listening to this, to say, well, my life is over, it's too late. No, it's not too late. I've worked with so many people that are 60 plus, that have changed their lives around completely, and now are now even better role models for their grandkids, and then also in a way possibly impact their own children to make these changes for their kids as well. It's so important. It doesn't matter what age it is.
Beautiful. We have to start wrapping it up. Chris, would you please remind us of how can we find you online?
Absolutely. The best places to find me are, I'll give you two websites. My own personal page, which incorporates my coaching and consulting in terms of resolving the root cause of limited beliefs and mindset barriers, is Christopher, Christopher, Salem, like Salem, Mass, EFAME.com. And of course, our 501c3 nonprofit organization, Empowered Fathers in Action, that is EFA Movement, EFAMovement.org. Best places to find out more of what we're doing and get in contact with us.
Awesome. What about you, Dan? Where can we find you online?
Pretty much
You can find me on Facebook, Sustainable Success Radio Show, my personal page, LinkedIn at Christopher Salem. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, you name it. I'm very active in communicating and sending out positive messages to help people. Again, I have no expectations. It's just there to be a positive influence and help others to do the same and get out of their own ways to be better people.
Excellent. And you, Dan?
Yes, you look up danblanchard.net or granddaddy'ssecrets.com or just Google Dan Blanchard, author, speaker, whatever. I'm everywhere. Facebook, all the social media. You'll find me. I'm everywhere.
Excellent. Excellent. So thank you. Thank you very much, Chris. It's been a pleasure to get to know you today and to learn so much about what you do and why you do it. So thank you for sharing so much time with us.
Thank you so much, Angel and Dan, for having me. It was a pleasure, and look forward to serving any way I can in the future.
Because it was a joy seeing you again.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you again for being with us today, Dan, and hope to see you soon.
You're welcome, Angel. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, this is Angel Rivo with Mindalia TV. Thank you very much for being with us today. We hope that you enjoyed the show as much as we did, and hope to see you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.